The Big Ten is selling off its conference for $2 billion. And in other news, the Big Ten is dead. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. Today, the Big Ten is falling apart. I mean, like, already the Oregon-Penn State thing was weird. They're like, oh, those two schools are playing. The viewership numbers weren't what they wanted them to be. And now they're selling the conference for $2 billion. This is it. This is the beginning of the end. I can explain why with TJ Pittenger of College Football Addiction. Then Cody Campbell, that famous Texas Tech grad who's trying to save college football, just got silenced. Blacklisted by ESPN, Fox, the major networks. Why? How? And more so, how do we help the grassroots effort that Cody Campbell is pitching? Finally, BYU and Utah both need to win this week against Arizona and Arizona State. Which I like, it's sad to say that for Arizona and Arizona State, but here's where the conference needs more marquee matchups, including a holy war that features two top 25 teams. If you hit subscribe, we get to keep my job. Also, this podcast is available if you're watching on YouTube on audio. And I post extra podcast, bonus content on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, even you sound like your Amazon Echo advice, but hey, play Locked On Big 12. I think it does it. I don't know actually, but I think it does it. TJ, what do we got?
Drake, let's start up north. I guess really all over. They're out west. They're out west. It's just, I don't want to say America's conference, but the conference of America, we'll say. Is the Big Ten making a good decision right now for their league and for college football? Let's just jump right into it.
No, not at all, actually. and the universities seem to agree. The university presidents seem to agree that going into a private equity deal is not the best option at all. Jordan Acker is a Michigan regent who says that he believes selling off Michigan's precious public university assets would betray the responsibility to students and taxpayers. And that's what the Big Ten wants to do, is completely sell out. This is from Front Office Sports. This is ultimately the death of the league. It's the death of schools like Washington, even some big brands, schools like UCLA, who is a big brand. It's the death of an Indiana, who has now become a stalwart for them at the top of college football, a top 10 team that is bringing game day to town because of how good they are against the Oregon Ducks. And Front Office Sports says sources tell them that at least two NIL collectives are paying players before deals are done, which is already snafu number one, to where money management is not going well. Bob Thompson, former Fox executive, says interesting day in Big Ten land. Looks like big dogs want to be fed. We're already having money issues. And the Big Ten's response is, let's make it even crazier and go into a private equity deal. This from ESPN in a full statement that the Big Ten gave to ESPN. It says, our membership has clearly expressed the need to modernize the operations and structure of our conference to ensure the Big Ten remains best positioned to offer the highest level of athletic and academic excellence. So it's a fluff response in order to say, yeah, we are currently looking at $2 billion in private equity that we could garner right now. And what that means is the Big Ten will effectively sell itself. It will become free to trade on the market, and not the literal market, but in essence, that we're just going to give you our conference. And if you give us $2 billion, we'll give you kind of whatever you want. If it's $2 billion to rename the league to the All-State 10, then yeah, we'll go ahead and probably do that. And so you lose autonomy as a league to operate. And what's worse than that, if I'm Michigan, and here's where it's going to really come into play to kill the Big Ten. If I'm Michigan, I don't want Illinois to get the same amount of that $2 billion that I do. If I'm Michigan, I don't want Rutgers to get that. I'm going to ensure that Purdue and Northwestern aren't given the same money, because if we're honest, TJ, and it happens in the Big 12, it happens in the SEC, the reason deals like this come around are not because of the prowess of Rutgers. They're not because of, how good of a brand that you see in football in Purdue. And in the Big 12, we don't get new opportunities because UCF carries so much weight or Cincinnati carries a ton of weight. No, it's because Texas Tech or BYU are playing at a high level at the top of college football and they have big brands. So it's not a foreign idea to pitch the fact that Michigan's going to want a lot of the money out of the $2 billion. And when you start to consider this being weighted, Bud Elliott says no way the 5 Big Ten programs who pull ratings for the conference agree to the private capital deal without an eat what you kill revenue structure. And at that point, John Kurtz says, shocked it has universal support from reports. This is going to plunge your low tier, even mid tier Big Ten schools so far behind the Big Five that at some point we're just kind of at a 10-team league in college football. If you're not named LSU, Michigan, Alabama, etc., you just don't get to compete at the top of our sport. This is another example of the Big Ten only wanting money. And may I remind you, TJ, we're seeing the Big Ten kind of crumble before our eyes as is. Oregon playing a road conference game against Penn State didn't bring in what we thought it would. It doesn't have the same feeling. It doesn't feel like college football. Penn State losing to UCLA doesn't feel like college football, being a conference game. Those are the fun bowl matchups. The Rose Bowl, Oregon, Penn State, is something we were all dialed in on. They were kind of disappointed with the way that it's all played out in their current expansion structure. So this is another example of the Big Ten wanting a lot of money, and the money probably coming back to bite them.
Yeah, a couple ideas, thoughts there, and you went for a while, not in a bad way.
Didn't I?
I
was on a soapbox there. Wow.
It was a good rant. But it gave me a lot of things to point out. One, I mean, the ACC started this with the unequal revenue sharing. It is not surprising to me that other conferences, other teams like Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, Penn State, that say like, hey, look, we're the ones that make you money. If we're getting additional, we want that more. And it doesn't surprise me that once that can of worms was opened by the ACC, again, it wouldn't surprise me if the SEC had something similar. If Georgia said like, dude, no, you're not paying Mississippi State the same thing you pay us. Like that, I'm not saying that happens. I'm not projecting that to happen. But I'll tell you this, the Big Ten does this, it'll eventually happen everywhere. Like I do think that that's just kind of the way that things are going. I don't think that Bama's going to say, yeah, you know what? Pay Missouri the same thing you pay us, right? Pay South Carolina the same thing you pay us because, let's just all live charitably. Not once Ohio State starts making more money. They ain't going to do that. Not once Michigan starts making more money. I don't see that doing that. And then eventually, does that trickle down to the Big 12? Does that trickle down to every conference? Kind of an eat what you kill. The rich continue to get richer and richer and richer. And so, yeah, don't think it's great from that perspective. But you're right. Like it does create there's already such a gap, right? If everybody makes the same money, which from a TV revenue aspect, everybody always has made the same amount of money, right? And Ohio State has still been better than everyone else, even though they were all making the same TV revenue, because you do make money from your booster donations and your season tickets and stuff. The TV and then the private equity money is so much bigger than just your booster donations, your money that you just make from licensing and trademark and merchandise and ticket sales and stuff like that, that the gap would be lessened if not for unequal revenue sharing, right? Yeah, Ohio State brings in way more than Indiana does in booster donations. But with how crazy TV deals are getting, if everybody's making, 150 on the next TV contract, your ticket sales just aren't as big of a gap as they used to be. And I do agree. The second thought I had with some of this is, man, like I can buy Red River is this weekend.
Yeah.
I can buy that matchup because of the way that they were brought into the SEC. Mm. That matchup is not diminished because it went from the Big 12 to the SEC. Big 12 fans may not want to hear this, but if anything, it's probably expounded upon a little bit because now it's an SEC matchup. But at the very worst, it's just a net neutral, right? That matchup is still that matchup. Oregon Penn State was a top 10 matchup, and it maybe had something to do with the fact that there were like 3 points scored for like 45 minutes of the game. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, that matchup just it doesn't feel the same. And I know Penn State came out and blew it the next week too, but it doesn't feel the same as like a Michigan Ohio State or a Michigan Penn State or an Ohio State Penn State or Nebraska and one of those teams. It does just feel different. Whereas with the SEC's ads, not to give them any credit, Texas and Oklahoma is going to feel great this weekend. It's going to feel like it always has. In fact, maybe feel a little bit bigger based on where those two programs are right now.
Yeah, which doesn't change Texas and Kentucky in a couple weeks being terrible.
Right. For sure. And honestly, shout out Mark Stoops, but most of the times Kentucky plays feels pretty terrible. Yeah. But the point is taken. And so the further and further you get away from that, listen, we've talked about this, the realignment aspect. What is this money used for? Well, could it be used for some realignment stuff? Could it be used to move things around before the next TV deal? Maybe. And that would make sense maybe from the Big Ten's perspective. But I'd say this, adding Clemson to some of these matchups, when Clemson or Florida State or Miami play Ohio State, those will be very fun and we'll all enjoy them. Oregon, Michigan, USC and Miami, that'd be that would be fun. Illinois and Miami, Rutgers and Florida State, Minnesota and Clemson. I don't even like the ACC. I would rather watch Clemson play Virginia Tech than 80% of the Big Ten teams that exist, right? Like that's just, and so we've lost so much. And you can blame the Big Ten, you can blame the ACC, you can blame the SEC, you can blame whoever you want, right? We're just losing so much of what college football is and was. And I understand we all like these big time, massive matchups. I'd love to see more of Florida State, Ohio State. I'd love to see more of Miami and Alabama. That's great. But you lose so much within that, right? When you do have to see Florida State, I'd rather see Florida State play, we're not very good at it, but Virginia than Vanderbilt, right? Like that's just because that's what college football's always been. So a lot of thoughts to
you met my 4 minutes with 5, TJ. Yeah, well, this is good stuff here. As I like it.
But it does suck. And again, it's going to, as top heavy as the Big Ten is right now, which they are, let's admit it. The SEC, maybe not elite anywhere, but great a lot of places. The Big Ten, conversely, 2 really good teams, and it looks like Ohio State and Oregon. Michigan, we'll see. Indiana, Illinois, jury's out. But that's it. It's a very top-heavy league, and that gap is going to get even wider.
No doubt. Absolutely. And it's something that is going to plague us in college football. It has plagued us. And I guess we'll see here in 2030, especially as these TV deals are reworked, where everyone goes and how it pans out. Today's show is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS top safety picks than anyone else. They craft cars for those who do more than simply move. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how they craft every model. Feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved, and do it with Mazda. Today's show is also brought to you by the only reason that I got cash in the bank and gas in the tank, Monarch Money. Yep, I'm 24 years old. That's pretty ripe. Pretty young, isn't it? Spry. Most people can't name all their financial accounts. I surely can't, whether it's 401k, properties, or investments, but actually now I can, because Monarch Money is right there, all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop, on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. Put off, organize your finances. Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in 1 minute, see clear data visuals as well, identify that you haven't been saving as much as you thought, and start saving even more. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year, 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege at Monarch Money.
So on to the Big 12 a little bit. ESPN, not a big fan of Cody Campbell, not a big fan of letting him talk. Let's talk about this for just a minute.
Neither is Fox. This is just stupid. And everybody's got a number, which is the crazy part to me, is like everybody has a number to run a commercial. I could call ESPN and say, I want to run a Locked On Big 12 commercial, a college football addiction commercial, and they're going to do it if I give them the right amount of money. Cody Campbell called and said, I want to run a commercial that helps save college football, that emphasizes that Congress needs to step in and do something about the NCAA amended Sports Broadcasting Act that is allowing ESPN or Fox or any of these big networks to take control of the schools, to take control of who's good, to take control of who actually gets money and who does not. Now, let me be very clear. Your TV ratings, in the same way that your stock investments, your TV ratings, the better those are, the more these networks eat. They want to have Oregon play Penn State so they can make more money as compared to Penn State playing Rutgers. They want to have these big matchups. I want my stocks to do well. But these new revenue models, these billion-dollar revenue models, as they start to go to schools like Oregon and we kill off the Pac-12 and we start to kill off the ACC and eventually maybe even the Big 12, what Cody Campbell wants to do with the Texas Tech donor, the Texas Tech grad, former football player for the Red Raiders, what he wants to do is go to Washington and say, look, we need to do away with the NCAA because conference commissioners and the association itself have all fallen victim to wanting so much money, so much greed. We've lost sight of the student athlete, and we're allowing Ohio State to become so much better than Utah could ever be. We're allowing Michigan to become so much better than Colorado could ever be. These schools were winning national championships like BYU and Colorado in the 90s. Can't do that anymore because we've created a gap through TV revenue and these deals that are billions of dollars long, but don't feed everyone. Like we want, what Campbell's saying is we want equal opportunity for student athletes, both at Virginia Tech and at Michigan. Equal opportunity for students at Auburn and at Tulane even. And you know what ESPN and Fox said? They said, take your commercial and shove it where the sun don't shine. And the entirety of the commercial was just him calling out conference commissioners saying, hey, if you're the Big Ten, if you're the SEC, if you're even the Big 12, these conference commissioners need to do what I'm doing, call upon Washington to fix a broken system. And in response to this, ESPN and Fox, the major cable companies, per Ross Dellinger, said, we don't want your money. We're not running this commercial. It is okay. It's like a treehouse, right? The concept of a treehouse is a living, breathing tree holds its dead friend. And so that's a little bit of what this would have been is Fox and ESPN running a commercial that's saying, hey, Fox and ESPN bad. And it doesn't call out the major networks. It just says we need change to make things equal for college athletes. And these conference commissioners, these networks are doing everything they can to silence Cody Campbell.
It's funny. I have long had the take, that people in administrative positions within conferences, honestly, really within maybe even some of your schools and stuff, but I'll save that rabbit trail for a different day. They don't care about these athletes, and not that your average fan is invested in these athletes' life. You like the guys that wear your team's colors. I get it. But these conference commissioners, they get up on these podiums and they talk about, we love our student athletes and we want to do what's best for them. But you only love them because they play for your university. You only love them because, or the universities that are members of your conference. Do you think the Pac-12 commissioner still cared about the athletes at Colorado and BYU and other places when they moved on? Do you think that the Big 12 commissioner, was it I don't know who the commissioner was when A&M and Missouri left. Do you think they still cared about those athletes once they moved on to the SEC? Do you think Jim Phillips, does he even care about the FSU ones now? But will he still care about the FSU athletes when they're gone? And so this idea of like, we're doing it. We get up on these podiums and we talk about, we care about the athletes. We want to protect their rights and we want to do this. We only care about them if it ultimately impacts our bottom line. Right. And let's just call it what it is. That's what the game is. And I understand it's a business for them. They're doing what's right for them. Your employer only cares about you as much as you're making them money or not costing them money, right? Depending on what your role is. So maybe that's not too foreign of a concept, but it is funny to hear about, hey, we're trying, they're running commercials all the time. Protect these athletes. I see them all the time on ACC Network. Protect these athletes' rights and, protect women's sports and all these other things. Make sure that NIL is equal opportunity and this, that, and the other. And when it really meets the road, not only do they not care, they will do whatever they can to silence people who are trying to do what's right. Cody Campbell certainly wants what's best for Texas Tech. But again, he's fighting for something that's so much bigger than just Tech. Yeah. He's fighting for college athletics in general as somebody with a lot of money who can make things happen, can influence situations, can influence the direction of not just our sport, but all college athletics. And ESPN's like, and Fox and others, nah, dog, we ain't doing that. We ain't doing that. You run ads for whatever you want, whatever propaganda you want, whatever cause or social justice or whatever you want. But don't bring any of that stuff in here that might cost us money or make us look bad. We're not with that. And so it is hilarious to see ESPN just be like, and again, Fox, others, I won't just lump ESPN with it.
Sure.
Just say, nah, we ain't having all that.
Yeah, that it is to an extent. I understand you don't want to run. I mean, if somebody paid Actually, let me backtrack on this. If someone gave me $100,000 a year to run a commercial in the middle of my show that says Locked On Big 12 is the worst podcast all time and we should boycott it, I'm probably taking the six figures. I mean, I'm probably taking the money. So before I even go off on ESPN here, I think what they're missing two things here, and this is a conversation about marketing. TJ, ooh, buckle up, everybody. Number one, they're missing the money Cody Campbell's going to give them to run this commercial. Two, you're missing good PR. Like this is an opportunity for you as a network to say, you know what, fine. We will take your money and we will display your message and we'll prove you wrong. We'll prove the little man wrong. Instead, if you start to, now we're getting into a history lesson. There was marketing, now history. The French Revolution, the more you suppress the speech, the more you kill the messenger, the more you take the guy who started the movement here and you say, nope, you can't speak, we're throwing you in jail. That's how the actual revolution begins, and it's what they're doing to Cody Campbell. And so that all sounds very aggressive, but it's a good metaphor. It's a good way to tie back in that Cody Campbell, the more he's silenced, the more people start to jump on, the more grassroots this effort becomes. And as we know, when an effort begins grassroots and there isn't that huge financial backing, that's where the emotion comes into play. That's where people start to live for the story. They start to buy into the not the ethos necessarily, but yes, the ethos, not the logos, not the lot. Wow, now I'm Greek. Not the logic.
a language lesson too.
The ethics, the pathos, the emotion. That's what's great about what Cody Campbell's doing. And honestly, it's kind of what's great about ESPN, Fox, these major networks saying, nope, we're not running it, is now more people can buy in and Cody Campbell can say, look at me, I'm the victim, I'm the underdog. Look how the big boss doesn't want me to speak. And people are going to buy into that, as they should.
Yeah, we don't have the reach that ESPN does. I understand that, but we wouldn't be talking about it today had the commercial aired. Yeah. We would not have done videos on this. And so our little part, right? Thousands of people will now see this and now be invested and do the research and talk with their buddies and share it in their group chats and all of those things. And listen, I don't think, Drake, you've probably been on here 50 times and then we've done multiple segments. We've probably done 150 videos together. I've never once asked for people to share a video that we have done. We ask for likes or subscribes or comments or whatever sometimes. If you've never shared one of our videos before, I'd say this one would be a good one to share. Not for Drake, not for myself. I don't care which channel you're watching this on. This would be a good one to share because that's how grassroots efforts do impact change. In fact, I don't ask for shares in many of the videos that I do.
If you unsubscribe from us and share, I mean, there you go. Like now we're going one for, we're not benefiting, but college football is. Yeah. Resubscribe later.
It truly is. Yeah. Don't leave us forever. But if you want to, one for one, you could downvote it and share if you need to, whatever makes you happy. But yeah, if you were ever going to share one, it'd be this one because the little guy should win. It's funny to talk about Cody Campbell as the little guy, but again, it is up against ESPN. So yeah, if you were ever going to share one, this is how movements start. This is how change is impacted. So we'd ask you to do that if you could.
No doubt. Hey, sorry, pause. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is where I go to win money. Love it. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. You go in, you pick like 3 or 4 guys, even 2 guys. Josh Allen, passing yards, over. Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown. Bang. Put them together, put more or less on them, any of that jazz. And if that all hits, you get money. Also fun to follow other players in the app and copy their lineups with just one click. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Be right today with Prize Picks.
Lastly, in the Big 12 this weekend, how is desperate a good word? But how desperate is the Big 12 for a couple of their bigger brands to win this weekend, Drake?
Desperate's a good word. I didn't think about that, but I do believe the Big 12. So I mentioned on my show last, and this is going to be primarily about Utah and BYU winning their games this week. And honestly, Arizona and Arizona State kind of falling on a sword a little bit. So I've said it multiple times. The more that our good teams win and our bad teams lose, that's great. I would love to have eight squads that are 12-0 and 8 squads that are 0-12. Because at that point, you start talking about more teams in the college football playoff. That's what the Big 12 needs to see. Last week, what we got in this conference was a pretty good example of that. We didn't see the chaos that I was promised. Like West Virginia didn't upset BYU, which would have been devastating. We didn't see Arizona lose to Oklahoma State. We didn't see TCU get upset by Colorado or Kansas lose to UCF. The good teams in this league beat the by and large bad or rebuilding teams in this league. And in the two games between the big teams, Texas Tech, Houston, Iowa State, Cincinnati, we got wins from the powerhouse Texas Tech and a Cincinnati win that should have put them in the top 25 and added yet another team in the AP poll from the Big 12. This week, I need the Big 12 to get wins from Utah and BYU. And so for myself, being in the chair of Locked On Big 12 host, I'm rooting for Arizona State just as much as I am Utah. It doesn't affect my paycheck who wins that game. It may affect what I do on a betting site, but it doesn't affect my paycheck. And it doesn't affect me if Kansas upsets Texas Tech. But what it does affect is the standing of the Big 12 on the national level. We need schools like Houston to beat Oklahoma State, because if they lose, we become more and more of a joke. They're the conference that cannibalizes themselves, and they're so chaotic, and they don't have elite teams. We need BYU, who's just a 1.5 point favorite, to knock off Arizona on the road. We need you, and Noah Fifita has been so good this season too. I love watching Noah Fifita. There's a chance, especially if BYU plays the way they did against Colorado or against West Virginia, that Arizona wins this game by 7 or 10 points. We need Utah to, for the first time ever in their school history, win a Big 12 home game. We need that this weekend against Arizona State. If you're an Arizona fan, if you're an Arizona State fan, and you're hearing that, you're thinking, well, that's stupid. I hate that. Yeah, it does kind of suck. But going into next week's Holy War, which is the unofficial name, I've only recently learned the schools don't call it that. Going into next week's Holy War, which is a cool name, BYU and Utah, if they're both ranked, if BYU's 15th in the country, Utah's 23rd in the country, that opens the door and at least gives you an opportunity to allow College Game Day to be on site for that matchup. Now, look, LSU is playing Vanderbilt, and that could still be a game that hosts College Game Day next week. And obviously, Ole Miss goes to Georgia, and Texas Tech gets Arizona State. So you could argue that if Arizona State went Tennessee, Alabama, like there are plenty of games on here. But last season, I think the Big 12 got one College Game Day game. If one, they may not have gotten any of them at all. The ESPN, they're going to make an excuse and every excuse to go to an SEC game because that's who they're paying the most money toward. That's where their investment is. For the Big 12 conference, you need to build up big matchups. And the biggest rivalry you have right now is BYU and Utah. That needs to be a top 25 game. That 8 p.m. game next week, 8 p.m. Eastern, needs to be a top 25 game. And look, if there is a team to lose, it should be Utah to give us number 18 Arizona State versus number 8 Texas Tech. That's another opportunity for College Game Day to visit this conference. We just need the big dogs to eat. And TJ, a lot of people accuse me of hating Utah. I still think Utah's good. And if Utah is good, it's good for the Big 12. I think BYU is good. If BYU is good, it's good for the Big 12. You need your teams at the top of the league to keep winning. That's why Florida State going down to Virginia and then losing again in Miami was so detrimental. Sorry, close to home. But if Florida State beats Virginia, then loses to Miami, we're not really worried about Florida State. They're still probably number 9 in the country right now. They lost to the number 3 team in the land, right? It's those matchups you don't expect. It's those upsets you don't expect that truly put a conference in a bad spot, especially when it comes from your top teams.
There's only one conference that gets the benefit of beating every week being a battle and beating up on each other. And so when the SEC loses to a mid team or a middle of the road team, it's not a big deal. It does. It hurts the Big 12. It hurts Florida State and the ACC. It certainly hurts the Big 10 when Penn State loses to UCLA. It's just not the same. You don't get the same credit. Although the Penn State UCLA thing, I get that that's very different than, a middle of the road team, but the thought applies, right? You get mulligans in one conference, you don't in another. Thoughts on that BYU? Let's talk about each game just quickly, and we'll get out of here. Thoughts on that BYU game? Do you like? We'll do both of them, but do you like BYU in this, or what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I do. I believe analytically, BYU is kind of due for a good game defensively because the analytics still back it up. If you look at why West Virginia scored 24 points, a big reason was turnovers. BYU was just handing the Mountaineers the ball and effectively handing them points. Like, here you go, have the ball in the red zone, go score, whatever. The Colorado game, the first quarter was porous defensively. It's like BYU, you can kind of point to, and I don't want to make excuses for their mistakes, but you can point to where the Cougars fell short, and typically it's not defensively. It's being put in bad situations by the offense. For Arizona, this is the best defense they've seen And you could argue if it's close to any defense they've gone up against, it's Iowa State. They lost that game 39-14. Noah Fifita fell apart in that contest. Night game, Vampire Cougs. I think BYU can walk into a game. Fifita against Iowa State had a couple of interceptions. I predict BYU scores a touchdown defensively, adds some points in this game defensively, ends up winning by 10 or so. Expect a 31-21 final, maybe a 28-21 final. One of those good old-fashioned classic football scores. BYU wins, and it's good for the conference.
What about Utah, Arizona State, Kenny Dillingham, Sam Leavitt? Thoughts here?
Man, I still have a couple question marks about Sam Leavitt. Isn't it weird that we're not talking about him the way we are Sawyer Robertson at Baylor or Josh Hoover at TCU? Like, okay, am I wrong, right or wrong here? Sam Leavitt was the quarterback in the Big 12 coming in.
I thought him and Sawyer were at the like kind of the same.
Yeah.
I think Sawyer's a little more talented. Sam had like the pedigree of being in the playoff and a play away and all that stuff.
No doubt. And so what's so hard about this for me is when will Sam Leavitt wake up and be a Heisman Trophy finalist? I asked the same thing about Avery Johnson of, you aren't bad. It's not like I don't like Sam Leavitt as quarterback this year. It's just he hasn't been what we were promised, right? Yeah. He has just 12 more passing yards than Devin Dampier, and Dampier's whole thing is running the football. The run game with Brown has been good for Arizona State, and Jordan Tyson's the best wide receiver in all of America. So they come into this game with a really good skill group. Their wins against Baylor and TCU are both gutty. I like the way that they had the resolve to pull off the win against Baylor and come back fast. I like the way they had the resolve to hold off TCU in that game and come back down 17. However, Utah 48-14 against West Virginia, coming off of a bye week as well. Arizona State has played now in 3 consecutive weeks and in 2 very close games. That Texas State game, even before Baylor and TCU, was also a tough matchup. Utah's defense is gritty, had a week of rest. I think this home game is one where the Utah Utes just suffocate Arizona State. If I just predicted BYU to possibly have a defensive touchdown, another opportunity for Utah to do the exact same thing. I do believe we get combined 1 loss in the Holy War coming up next week between Utah and the Cougars.
The ESPN analytics, I know we all hate FPI, but have both of the teams you're cheering for as like 69% nice to win.
Honor code violation.
BYU's going to cancel me now for this, which I don't love FPI.
Sure.
In general, I think from a week-to-week matchup standpoint, they do a fairly good job. I think
it's better, right? It's better.
Yeah, they very much overrate teams, but in the actual game analysis, I think they do a fairly good job. You just have to understand that when you have an ACC team and an SEC team playing, you have to factor that in. If they overrate the whole SEC, their Big 12 rankings are still fairly accurate. They're just not accurate on a grand scheme. Predicting games, I think FPI does a pretty good job. I saw a stat and I just don't even have any clue what it was, but their percentages check out a lot of the time in just head-to-head matchups. So obviously they weight things differently, but if you overrate Alabama and you overrate Georgia, your head-to-head prediction for that game is still, you've overrated the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so it works out to be fine. So we'll see if they can get it done. Just quickly, can anybody stop Texas Tech though? Like, is that a thing?
Stop asking this question. It's still no. Everybody keeps being like, no, well, maybe they just pot their roster and it'll all run out. Nope. They're good, TJ. They're really good.
They're really good. They're not a good Big 12 team. They're a good college football team.
Dude, they're our best shot to win a game in the college football playoff in maybe the playoff era. We only have one, but they're a really good shot to do it.
Yeah, and a home game there for Texas Tech would be pretty wild. So bring it on. Drake, where can people follow you, find your work?
At Locked On Big 12, wherever you find your podcasts with Locked On Big 12, as well as YouTube, and at Drake C. Toll if you like bad tweets.
Thanks, buddy.
Always fun.